Good afternoon, everyone, and I hope you had a nice lunch break. And welcome back to the second half of the European Healthcare Climate Summit with the session Advancing Healthcare Climate Resilience, a Holistic Approach. I'm Gabriella Abruzzo, and I'm Climate Project Officer at Healthcare Without Harm Europe, and I will be your moderator for this session. As climate change continues to challenge global health systems, our aim today is to explore what climate resilience means in healthcare, discuss best practice, and highlight the importance of resilience in healthcare workers. It's not enough for the healthcare sector to reduce its impact. The sector must also become resilient to the impact of climate change and support community health against their associated health risk. Today, 10 October, is the World Mental Health Day, and this year's theme is Mental Health at the Workplace. This International Day aims to raise awareness about mental health and encourage effort in support those people that are suffering from mental health issues. On this occasion, we are really proud to feature a presentation that will focus on exploring what are the challenges that climate change poses on mental health. We have a really exciting panel of expert speakers joining us today, and I will always remember to submit your questions if you have any in the chat, and we will answer. We'll have Q&A session at the end, where we will answer as many questions as possible. Before giving the floor to our speakers, I will introduce a bit the session. I will set the scene with the definition of climate resilience and climate resilience health system. According to the Intergovernmental Panel of Climate Change, climate resilience is the ability and agility of a system to change, flex according to circumstances and continue to function under stress while undergoing change. Resilience describes the whole the system capacity and not just the absence of vulnerability. Climate resilience health system, according to the definition of the World Health Organization, is a system that is capable of anticipating, responding to, coping with, recovering from, and adapting to climate-related shocks and stress to bring about sustained improvements in population health despite an unstable climate. To this definition, we would like to highlight some aspects of climate resilience. A timely and efficient response is essential. The element of anticipation is crucial because a health system should be aware of and prepared for the impacts that climate change poses on them. It should be able to succeed under various conditions, whether they are expected or unexpected, because we know that the extreme weather events produced by climate change are continuously more severe and unpredictable. And so climate resilience should not be only the ability or the capacity for the system to absorb an adverse event. And lastly, but this element is extremely crucial, is the element of decarbonization. Indeed, a resilient health system is a system that also decarbonizes. So it reduces emission without additionally emitting and without exacerbating the already severe extreme weather events. So the climate resilience ability of a system depends on two elements. So the ability to reduce the emission, but also the preparedness in to face extreme weather events. But how does the context in which European health systems and European hospitals operate to look like? Europe is currently the fastest warming continent on the planet, and it's projected that by 2100 up to 1,400 hospitals in Europe will be at high risk of total or partial shutdown due to extreme weather events. and 11% of European healthcare facilities are located in flood-prone areas. The most significant climate hazard that European hospitals and facilities are facing are heat waves, flood, and wildfires. To this, other significant climate hazards are storm, droughts, or cold spells. All these climate hazards produce various impacts on the health systems. We can distinguish them between direct impacts and indirect impact. Examples of direct impact include the sudden influx of patients during extreme weather events, patients presenting with particular kind of illness and disease, damage of hospital infrastructure caused directly by extreme weather events, and while examples of indirect impacts include the degradation of other critical infrastructure that are essential for a hospital to operate, such as the transport network and the water and energy supply, loss of utilities and reduced supply, reduction in staff availability, and decrease of healthcare workforce well-being. It's also important to highlight that extreme weather events represent a burden to those facilities that are not directly impacted by those events. But what can healthcare facilities and health system can do to improve their climate resilience? Some key action might be the establishment of a community and cross-sectoral approach. This means because climate resilience cannot be built in isolation. So what is necessary is to engage with and collaborate with stakeholders like local authorities, institutions, or suppliers to, for example, guarantee the access to the hospital facilities, or to guarantee water, energy, and other essential product supply. It's important to make well-informed decisions. This can be done through checklists that will help you to assess your resilience capacity, and through vulnerability and risk assessment. Thanks to this, you can identify your vulnerabilities, set priority, and target areas. Target areas are those areas where intervention is more needed. This can include infrastructure, supply chain, or simply the necessity to raise awareness on the impact of climate change on health or on the healthcare service. It's important to carry out feasibility and cost-benefit analysis to understand if a measure that you would like to implement is implementable and feasible cost-wise and capacity-wise. It's also essential to monitor and measure your plans and actions to understand if or not they are effective or how much they're effective, and also if you are achieving the goal you have set. It's important to support healthcare workers, and not only increasing their capacity, but also in ensuring the well-being and the mental health during and after climate-related extreme weather events. It's also important to communicate your work and progress to the others. To conclude, hospitals and health systems must be prepared to foresee, respond, and recover from climate-related extreme weather events while decarbonizing their operation. A resilient health system is a vital element for climate resilience community. We must ensure that hospital will be the last building standing in time of crisis. Now, thank you for your attention. I will leave the floor to Miguel. Miguel is a biomedical engineer from Sergas, the Galician Health Service, and he will present their work on climate resilience, and especially in the framework of the Life Resistant project. Miguel, the floor is yours. We can see your presentation, so you can start.
Nice, perfect. So, thanks, Gabriela, for your presentation. Hi, I am Miguel Diaz Casafonte. I am, as she said, a biomedical engineer that works for the Galician Health Service, which is the organization that provides most of the healthcare of the region. So, a brief context about that. Galicia is the northwest region of Spain. It's a the Galician Health Service is a fully public institution. It's the biggest company in Galicia, with more than 30,000 workers, and it provides around the 80% of total healthcare in the area. In particular, I work for the Ourense healthcare area, which is the image that you see in the bottom left, which is a rural area with about 300,000 people. And it's not really important for this presentation and for this project, but the main issue that we face to provide the context is the demographical issues. This is common to all Europe, both because of the aging of the population that puts a lot of pressure on the healthcare system capabilities, and because of the difficulties to replace personnel, technical or clinical. So about the Life Resistal project, it is a European project. It's a close to market project with only 55% funding from the European Union. And its objective is to improve resilience, to provide a framework to improve resilience of the health systems and hospitals. As Gabriela said, we defined, she did a long explanation, but shortly explained, it's about resilience is about combining mitigation and adaptation to the climate change. So in the healthcare area of Ourense, which is the one that participates in the project, we will make three different implementations in the three hospitals that are in the area. Green pergolas in the Ourense Hospital, a rainwater collection system that will be used for watering the lawns in the Berín Hospital, which is a rural hospital. The Ourense Hospital is a major hospital with more than 1,000 beds. And the Berín Barco Hospital with the rainwater collection systems and the green roof are rural hospitals with around 100 beds. So a bit of context, the region where I am, the Ourense region, is it has a lot of contrast between winter and summer. You can observe in the left image that this is the weekly data from the last 10 years of the mean maximum temperatures. So you can observe that it's very common that in August, in the middle of the year, we have the 35, 33, 32 degrees all days with a mean temperature of above 30 degrees. And in winter, it's quite cold, at least for the Spanish standard. And it is a region that has also a lot of rain, but very located in the winter and autumn. So in summer, it's quite a dry area. So about the three implementations, the first one in the Ourense Hospital, it's a small implementation consisting on installing green pergolas in a sun-exposed area at the front of the hospital. Currently, this area is above a parking, so it's an area that has a function, but currently the surface of it is not being used, and it's extremely exposed to sun, which comes from the south also. So we will do some green pergolas that will provide shadow and for the people, especially trying to enter the parking, because they will be at the entrance of the parking. This is a small implementation, but mainly because we are doing a new building in the hospital, so the integration of adaptations measures with the construction of the new building is quite challenging. So yeah. Then in the Obarco de Valdeorras Public Hospital, which, as I said, it's a much smaller hospital with around, I think it's exactly 100 beds. We will do a green roof. Green roofs are generally great. They will be in the area that you can observe in the right image. Green roofs generally provide temperature reduction, and they have lower maintenance than other types of roofs. In fact, as you can observe in the image, currently there is and an official green roof in the area. And the main advantage of installing a new one is that the plants that grow in a normal plain roof, they can damage the impermeabilization with the roots. So being able to choose the species and the maintenance that they will require can really reduce the maintenance cost and improve the efficiency of the building. It will be to 2,100 square meters of green roof, and yeah. And in the Brain Hospital, it will be a rainwater collection system that, as I said, they will be used to water the lawns. Currently, it's I mean, the water is from the inside of the earth. It's well is the word. Sorry. There is a well that provides most of the water, so this will reduce a lot the stress of the ecosystem for the usage of the plants, and the capacity of the rainwater collection system will be around 1 month of use. And this is a common question. The water will be disinfected both in and out, because the regulations regarding the quality and the levels of microbes that are in the water are quite strict for health systems. So the water will be disinfected in the way in and out, and obviously filtered. And another interesting aspect of the project is that monitoring stations will be installed. And the idea of installing these climate stations will be to exactly know what are the improvements that the measures provide. So the future idea, as I said, is to help other systems to improve resilience. So for that, we need to know exactly what are the best measures that one can do. So we will monitorize, for instance, the shadow that a green pergola provides in relation to the cost of it, or the inside temperature reduction of the green roof, and all those measures. So this information will be provided to the other partners, the technical partners. There are two main branches of this project. The first one is the technical partners, which are the ones that will try to develop toolboxes and tools to help systems to do the resilience actions. These partners are the Cambridge University, Healthcare Without Harm, Democritus, and two European consultants. I must recall that this is a close to market project. So this integration will be, I mean, the idea is that they develop tools to help other systems. So, and then the other branch is the ones that I am in, which is the hospitals that will provide their personnel, their data, their information to help these technical partners. These hospitals are the three of the Sergas, the Policlinico de Bari in Italy, which will do benches with trees, and the Nikaya Hospital, which has already installed air conditioning, high efficiency air conditioning for new works. And also there will be a third Cyprian hospital that I think it will be a green roof. So this is mainly it. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Miguel. It was really interesting to hear about the measure you're implementing at Sergas. Now it's time for our second speaker, Judith Anderson. Judith is a psychotherapist at the Climate Psychology Alliance, and today she will focus on the human side of climate resilience. We can see your slide, Judith, so the floor is yours. You're muted, so we cannot hear you now. It's okay.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to speak. As you know, research has shown how much the climate crisis impacts on health. And that, of course, means that those in the health professions and associated professions are necessarily in the front line. That might be in the front line of research or the front line of public health. And of course, today of all days, we're thinking about being in the front line of disasters. Imagine being on the front line in the wake of hurricanes Helene and today Milton. Although this is a European conference, I also want us to hold very much in mind the extraordinary disparities of provision between Global North and Global South. In a recent speech at Chatham House, David Miliband of International Rescue, a charity, spoke about the overlap between countries most affected by climate change, most affected by poverty, and most affected by instability caused by war. That intersection of appalling threats. Imagine being a health professional in that front line. I want to spend a bit of time talking about the mental health impacts of climate change. Could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. Should be number 2. That's okay. What I want to do is that some of this information may be very familiar to you, but I'd like you to listen to it through the lens that this is about us too, not just about those people over there being impacted emotionally and in their mental health by climate change. So could I have the next slide, please? We don't seem to have had that. Okay, so I'll go along without the slide. So it's the slide that has the 3 effects of climate change. Thank you. So we can think of these as 3 effects: the temperature impacts, the mental health impacts of chronic and acute climate events like repeated droughts or floods or storms, and then the whole pattern of eco-distress. So looking at the next slide, please, on temperature effects. Next one, please. Thank you. One before that. Can you stop at the one that has the... Thank you. That's great. Rising temperatures, wherever you live in the world, we get habituated to a particular levels of temperature. And when these increase, rates of violence, rates of suicide, rates of partner violence, and increased psychiatric admissions occur. With particular vulnerable groups, those with drug issues and people with psychosis are more vulnerable. And next slide, please. That in the Canadian state of British Columbia, in the 2022 heat dome, 8% of people with psychosis died. That's an appalling figure and tells us very much the implications for public health, because these people were not able to get the message about how to protect themselves from the heat and did not have the resources or the facility to take necessary precautions. So does our hospital air conditioning stand up for rising temperatures? What about air conditioning in operating theatres? But also, let's make this personal. As we're working in all our facilities, are we worrying about our elderly relatives? Are they drinking enough water? Do we have friends who have a grown-up son with psychosis that they're troubled by? We don't just go to work and leave our families and friends out of our minds. The second, next slide, please. The second way that climate change impacts our mental and emotional health is the disruptive impact of extreme weather. And the World Health Organization has said very clearly that in Northern Europe particularly, the main health impacts will be the adverse mental health problems following floods and storms. And of course, hospitals and clinics are not excluded from these. But how do we go on working when we're worried about whether our own homes have been flooded, or safe? And how do we manage the complex running of health facilities, which may not just be flooded, but may have lost electricity? And I was very impressed by the need in our first speaker to test these, to test resilience. What might it mean for professionals caught up in such events? In the aftermath of Hurricane Katrina, there was a series of papers written by therapists who'd left New Orleans in the wake of the disaster. Now, many therapists didn't go back, but those who did resumed their practices in very adverse circumstances. And one psychotherapist wrote of the change of frame as they lived through the mopping up exercise, because plumbers and roofers were in such short supply that it was quite ordinary and understood for both client and therapist to keep their phones on in case the tradesman turned up, at which point the session might have to end. Now, this seems very ordinary, but how do we manage staff levels where it's really important that if the man turns up to mend your roof, you might have to go home to let them in? And the practicality of us all being caught up in these needs for urgent repair. And I'm sure those medical and nursing and allied professionals caught up in Milton will be going through all that, having to be generous and kind to allow your colleagues to rebuild their lives as well as continue to offer health. And thirdly, could I have the next slide, please? Yes, I've mentioned the vulnerability factors to those psychological impacts. And next, please. Thank you. So there's the whole area of eco-anxiety, which is a response to what will happen in the future in ways that we can't control. The term eco-anxiety is very much a shorthand, and we tend now to call it eco-distress, because it's not just anxiety, it's grief and rage and passivity and so on, and also disavowal. And of course, all these different impacts of temperature, the traumatic effects of floods and storms, and eco-anxiety and eco-distress can overlap. You might be a health professional, perhaps there are many here today who has channeled their eco-concern into drawing your government's attention to the health impacts of climate change. And with a disaster, your own house might be flooded, or relatives affected by heat waves. So those three areas massively overlap. How can we prepare for this? Perhaps the most important thing to do is to break the silence. There's a very careful description of what's called socially constructed silence about climate change. It seems extraordinary for those of us who have been living actively and consciously with climate change for decades, perhaps, to really fully recognize that perhaps we're in some kind of bubble and that outside the world doesn't care so much. The world is still going on lots of holidays and buying goods and using fossil fuels, and governments, of course, aren't helping. But we do need to break the silence and make it quite ordinary to be talking about climate change and its impacts. It's really important that we support each other in these ways, and particularly that we normalize climate emotions. We feel climate emotions, the grief, the anxiety, the rage at times, because we care. We're concerned for our planet and its people and its other than human life. So I think it's really important that when you get together people in a hospital or facility to talk about the practical actions that might make a facility more sustainable and resilient, that you include emotional check-ins. Just very briefly, how are you today? What are you feeling about climate change? And just get used to the idea that in any random group of people, there's going to be some people who are excited by some progress. There might be others who are in a state of grief. There might be others who are very anxious. And all these eco-emotions are normal. Climate Cafe is a methodology used by many climate scientists to give them space to check in with their feelings. Science is not an emotion-free zone in this area. In the UK, we also have Schwartz rounds, which are ward rounds where people are able simply to speak about the emotional impact of whatever is happening, not necessarily climate change, but it's been used to talk about climate change. There's an organisation called Cadence Round Table, which offers opportunity for people in health and local government to talk about both the practical and emotional impact of adaptation to climate change. And another example I found were general practitioners who belong to greener practice groups and find that they are very supportive. So we absolutely have to ensure that the top-down governance of our health services and facilities not only include contingency and disaster planning, but that they are planning for emotional support. I just want to end by talking about hope. People say to me, we must give each other hope. Perhaps they particularly say we must give young people hope. But all too often that means suggesting that we tell an incomplete narrative or invoke the certainty that science will solve the problem, or the idea that individual actions are an adequate solution. And frankly, I don't know about you, but I'm not interested in that kind of hope that denies the reality of what we're facing. We need a very muscly and sinewy hope that is really facing the realities of exactly what has been mentioned in this conference, the realities of climate change, the fact of hospitals being built on floodplains, etc. Hope that doesn't take the truth into consideration is a false hope. And if we can have the next slide, please. So Jonathan Lear's book about radical hope has some wonderful ideas. Cristina Figueres talks about her stubborn optimism. And Gramsci spoke about pessimism of the intellect, optimism of the will. Personally, right now, I'm really nourished by the ideas of Václav Havel on ethical hope. Ethical hope is very much to do with the ability to work for something because it's good, not just because it stands a chance to succeed. And the more unpropitious the situation in which we demonstrate hope, think Hurricane Milton, the deeper that hope is. Because the science is telling us that every 1/10 of a degree that we can hold global temperature down does make a difference to the escalating tipping points. And every single step we take to make our health services more resilient is going to contribute to a better life for our communities. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith. I think we can welcome Miguel back on stage. I think I have few questions for you. I think I will start with you, Judith. I think for the moment, this aspect of mental preparedness as well in climate resilience is quite underestimated. It will be important for health system, for healthcare facility to have more ad hoc procedures, something that is standardized and not only based on the illuminate mind of an individual that try to create this group. Which are, do you think, the challenges in having something standardized can be in every health system, in every facility? Why it's not the case? Why these groups that do not exist yet?
I think we can tend to be very heroic and think we can manage, and that was why I specifically was inviting the audience to think about themselves when they saw these statistics about the mental health impact of climate change. I think it is both personal and collective, and it's also that the research is a bit behind. You know, we need more research on the impact of, say, climate cafes. There's certainly been a write-up of using Schwartz rounds to talk about climate change. And I think these things need publicizing alongside the more medical research. I think the other thing I wanted to say was that I think those of us who are facing climate change, and I'm assuming that most people at this conference take it very seriously, I think actually we end up doing the emotional heavy lifting for the populations that aren't doing this. You know, we're facing it, and it actually costs us, and that's really important to say. So we need to take care of ourselves, both individually and collectively.
Before passing another question to Miguel, I would like to ask you also, because sometimes, obviously, there are some extreme weather events that are really emphatic, like a flood is pretty evident.
Yes.
Sometimes heat waves is more subtle, so you don't realize the effect that it has on you, especially on your mental health. And so it's really difficult to recognize. Do you have any suggestion in recognize any small sign, early stage, that is in you, in people around you, that say, yeah, maybe this is having an impact on you more than you think?
That's a very good question. I think there have to be the foundations of checking in with people as a matter of course on the good days, and then it will be easier to ascertain when people are more affected by this. If we run our health services a bit like machines, you know, conveyor belt, and we don't get to know each other and find out our strengths and weaknesses, then we won't recognize when people are actually under pressure. And of course, not just with climate change, but other events that happen to people, bereavements or,
Last question for Judith, because we have a question from the audience. How about viewing climate anxiety as a healthy reaction and a resource to be mobilized?
Yes, absolutely. I think there are points where we can get so anxious we do nothing. But I think one of my colleagues said that climate anxiety is actually because we care. We care. One could say that those people who are not anxious have more problems, seriously, because they're not taking into account the reality. And so it's a healthy reaction, except when it gets to the point that we're doom scrolling on our phones at midnight and we're not sleeping. And there are also situations where somebody already has a pre-existing mental disorder and the climate anxiety comes on top of that. So it's a kind of comorbidity. And of course, let's not forget, ordinary grief often needs emotional support. And so just because we say, oh, these climate emotions are normal, it doesn't mean we don't need support. We do. We need support with some of these climate emotions, mainly through working collectively and supporting each other in that process.
Thank you. I will pass to Miguel. I would like to continue this stream and maybe ask you if you think, or if you took into account if any of your green infrastructure, like the green pergola, could also have maybe an impact on the well-being, maybe of patients or on the healthcare workers.
I think that talking about the green pergolas, yes, definitely. And not only to the patients and to the healthcare workers, but to the familiars too, because usually a patient maybe is inside the hospital and cannot go out, but the family wants to go out, and if it's summer and you don't have any shadow in the near areas of the hospital, having it and being able to sit there and just, I don't know, I would say smoke a cigarette, but definitely not in a hospital. But the rest of it, it can really be good for the mental health. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe this not mental health anymore, but maybe a bit about how you identified the most, I would say, most proper measure to implement. Do you do it simply like, how did you do that?
So I think that identifying the best measures is part of all what this project is about, because it's not easy. There are many challenges when being a health institution that limit what we can do. For instance, installing anything can produce dust that patients cannot inhale dust, and can produce different problems. Integrating also, because a hospital is always at work, it has always activity, it has always other works that are being done. So usually I would say that there are not that many options in a hospital, so you can be removed constantly, remove possibilities, and eventually you have maybe 2 or 3 possibilities, taking into account the time that you have, the money that you have, and how it will integrate with the normal usual activities of the hospital. But differentiating between between these 2 and 3 options, it's really difficult, and I really hope that the project can help to better identify exactly what type of solution is the best.
Yeah, I think there is a lot interesting discussion in the chat about climate emotions. I think would be a nice topic of discussion for the networking session. So I will invite you to join those later. I will thank David Braswell is asking if we can Healthcare Without Harm make a new project on nature at hospitals. We might, maybe in the future. It's not in our program in this moment, but it's a nice topic. I will thank our speakers today, and thank you for contribution and insightful thoughts. Climate resilience. We learned today climate resilience is not only about system infrastructures, but it's also about people and processes. We hope you have gained valuable perspective today that will help you in your own activities and actions. Thank you as well to our audience for participating. And I will like, I think I can do it already. I would like to welcome on stage our next moderator.